Hi Katzin, so I wanted to go ahead and give you some feedback on your research paper. It looks like you did a lot of work. It looks like your interviews, you really got a lot of really interesting information from them. Also, I just want to compliment you on your very methodical, organized way of presenting your research results. It was very easy to see, you know, it wasn't all jumbled together. I think you made some clear choices there that makes it easy for your readers to kind of understand and make sense of the results that you're getting. So that's really good. I also, one thing I really liked seeing was your the way that you were trying to integrate quotes together from different sources, and also integrating quotes in places besides just the literature review. So I think that that is an excellent instinct, and I definitely want you to be doing it. I'm going to push you to think about which quotes you're going to be integrating, though, just making sure that when you do choose to include a quote, that it really fits your purpose really well and it feels relevant and closely connected, so that your reader can appreciate these other ideas that you're bringing in. So let's go ahead and go through your paper together. So I think that here it seems like this is your research question, right? You've got several different sentences here, so I think that I would like for you to try to clarify what is your research question. What is it that you're trying to answer? Is it all of these things? Are all of these things like sub-questions? What is the main question that you're answering, right? So maybe, because I know that in your interview you asked a lot of different questions, and all of those different questions gave you information, but what is the main overarching question that is driving your research? So here, like I said, you're kind of mentioning a lot of these questions that is reflective of the interviews you did, but it's a little unclear. What is the main research question that you're asking? Is it the differences of learning from Mexico to US? If that is the case, then you need to go ahead and restate it. Don't just assume that your reader is going to know that this is your research question. Sometimes they don't. I mean, we just need to be very mindful about reiterating and restating throughout your paper what your research question is. And I've seen you do that in other places, so that's good. Okay. So this is I think that this part here is a really successful I mean, this is a nice intro to the quote. It's a relevant quote, and it's a good start on explaining the quote. Can you do more than one sentence to kind of talk about it? What else can you say about it? So what else should we be thinking about that quote? And then as you, again, I really appreciate that you are putting together with that idea, this idea of working hard, right? But I think that we need a clearer transition here that shows your reader how these two ideas build upon each other. Right, because what you're saying here is that it's hard when it's really difficult when you don't already have a lot of time in that language, and maybe we want to give up, right? Or maybe we think we're never going to get better, but we know that, and it's true that Carol Dweck says students with a fixed mindset don't like effort. Well, we don't know yet what is a fixed mindset. So I think that you might need to explain what a fixed mindset is. And how is that related to the previous quote idea? How is it relevant to your research question? I can kind of see where you're going with it. I mean, it makes sense to me, right? That you can't give up. If you have a growth mindset, then you'll keep working and you'll get better at it. But those are the kinds of things that we discussed in class, but you're not really discussing them here for your reader. So you just want to make sure that you, these ideas that you want to talk about, that you're explaining them clearly and explaining those connections clearly for your reader. I know that you are making those connections, but we want to verbalize those connections for our reader, okay? And then the same thing here. I think that I'm not completely sure how this is absolutely related to your research question, because you're talking about these two specific people, but these two specific people, I know who they are because I've read the Brandt article, but your reader probably hasn't read the Brandt article, so it might be a confusing quote for the reader. Who is Raymond? Who is Dora? Right? They're not going to have that context. So you might consider quoting something that is more like a general conclusion instead of focusing on these two characters that we don't really even know, right? We don't know who they are. And again, then to build on that quote, how is it related to your question? So you're starting to do that, right? You're starting to do that. And that's a great start. Some people just leave it there and don't do anything. You're definitely starting to do that. But I think that you can develop that further, okay? This will make it much stronger. Now, this third quote here feels really disconnected to me as a reader. I'm not clear on how this paragraph fits in. In our class, we talked about this article in terms of, you don't, kind of like with the Dweck article with the fixed mindset, that you don't give up, that you try something and then you keep working at it until you get it where you want to be, right? But that connection isn't quite clear yet, okay? So part of what can help make that connection clear is a transition into the paragraph that kind of shows the connection between the previous ideas and this new idea. I think that you need to come out and say, while this article is about writing, we can also take that same concept and apply it to the daily life of a student in another country, where the first time that they try something, it is not easy for them. They have to keep trying again and again. And I think that that's what you're saying down here. But I think that middle connection of this thing that I'm quoting is about writing, but the thing I'm talking about is about studying in a foreign country. But like the transition, like the connection between those two ideas isn't there yet. Like, it's very clear to you because you're the writer, but you haven't verbalized it for your reader yet. So I think that if you want to include this paragraph using the shitty first drafts model, that's up to you. That is fine as long as you work harder to show how it is really relevant for your research questions. So right now you're kind of talking about it, but it's not quite there yet. So you want to, again, build up that sense of relevance. So I think that this section here, that you do a good job of a nice, clear explanation of your methods. So that's good. And then with all of your interviews, so here and elsewhere, this is a nice, organized format for your results. Okay, so that is also really good. You might consider, if you can, possibly including direct quotes. If you have them, like if you recorded them, you might include direct quotes. They make it feel maybe a little more lively. It's not required, but you might consider it just so that it doesn't start to feel really repetitive. And then the other thing I would ask you to think of is these sentences that you're using to introduce each result, right? You might think about, first of all, keep an eye open, an eye out for making sure that this is a grammatically correct sentence. Because I noticed that in each of those they don't feel quite grammatically correct. You might go ahead and just state the interview question that you asked them. So I've seen that before. If you just have the interview question maybe in bold or italics, and then after that the results. And I mean, that is just would be a very, almost kind of like a report. Here's the question, here's their, and then, you know, following that paragraph, here's their answers. Here's the question, here's their answers. It doesn't feel as lovely, like with the transitions and making it feel organic, but it is easy to follow. So that might add, I mean, you've already got a very structured results section, so adding a little bit more structure might actually fit into the format that you're already using. So you could consider that. If you don't want to do that, then you should still keep an eye out for these first sentences in all of these results paragraphs, because a lot of them are not grammatically correct, and so that is kind of like a distraction, and it takes us a minute to figure out what it is that you're writing about. Especially this one. I wasn't really sure what you meant by this one. What about learning? Are they really learning? I'm not really sure what that means. Can you rephrase or explain? And then I want you to think here too, learning is not the deepest and best learning. That doesn't seem like this is a complete, I want you to check this quote. What kind of learning is not the deepest and best learning? Like rote learning, memorization learning? What is not? I think that you're missing a word right here or something. So you might want to check it, and then also consider if it is directly related. I encourage you to keep something there. Okay, I encourage you to go ahead and integrate the quote, but much like I was saying above, you just want to make sure that if you're going to integrate a quote, that it is the right quote and that you work hard to show that relevancy, right? So you take that time to maybe build in stronger transitions or talk about it more afterwards, so that as a reader we really can see how it's relevant and just the right thing to be saying at that moment. So as you are coming to your conclusions, I want you to think about adding some analysis. So before we get to our conclusions, we have to analyze the results. And you did a really good job with your results of just being very objective. Here's what they said, and not, you know, mixing in your own interpretations yet. So that's really good. And I can see, you know, in the conclusions, you're drawing some general conclusions. But before we draw the general conclusions, we need to do some analysis. So I encourage you to think about, or talk about, or write about some specific results. Compare them with the ideas from your articles. And use that to draw your final conclusions, right? And then as you get to your conclusions, down here, in your final conclusions, I want you to think about what's the next step. More research, more support for international students, more encouragement of study abroad. I don't know what should happen next. And before I forget, some of these up here I thought that maybe you could give more specific examples too. I think the one about like how it's been different between the two countries. Where is that one? This one, it seems like there could be maybe, did they give any more specific examples? that might be helpful. That would probably be, if there's any examples that they gave that you're not including here, you should go ahead and include them. It gives us something specific to think about. Okay. And then again, this quote here, I really want you to make sure this is exactly the quote you want, and work to make it relevant for your reader. So on two levels here, I'm a little concerned about this particular quote. First of all, much like when you used to the Lamont article earlier, it feels disconnected to be talking about this experience of studying in another culture from writing drafts, right? Like that, that connection doesn't feel very obvious yet. And secondly, for a lot of readers, the title of the article and then using this word again in the quote is going to be really off-putting. Like, and maybe they won't be offended, but they're going to be like, "Whoa, what is that?" Like, they're going to be surprised, and you don't want them to walk away thinking about that word or that quote and what that was unexpected. You want them to walk away thinking about your ideas from your conclusion. So whether you use this quote or whether you use this article to end, as a quote or not, you're probably going to need to work, if you choose something, or if you use this quote or this article, or you decide you want to use a different quote or a different article, either way, you want to make sure that you're working to show that the connection between the quote or the ideas are really relevant and are very clear for your reader. I like what you're trying to do here, that don't give up, you got to keep going, because it's always hard at first and it's going to get better later. I like that idea. I think that but I'm not sure it's coming through very clearly here. And then the final thing to Katzin is that there are some places in here where your sentence structure is a little bit distracting. So once you feel like you've got the rest of it where you want it, I'm going to encourage you to come in to see me or take it to the Writing Center. If you go to the Writing Center, specifically ask for help with sentence structure, because otherwise they'll help you with other stuff. So at some point you need some feedback either from me or the Writing Center on the actual sentence structure and word, some of the grammatical stuff that's going on here, because we don't want your reader to be distracted by that. We really want them to be motivated by the ideas that you're writing about. Okay, so this looks really good, Katzin. I mean, I'm really pleased with the direction that it's going. Then I've talked about a lot of things, but the main thing I want you to be thinking about is integrating those quotes and making sure that the relationships between the quote and what you're talking about in your research question is really clear. Okay, I think that those connections are clear to you. We just need to work harder to make sure that they're clear to the reader. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. Come in and talk to me about it during office hours, and thank you for your good work.